Many of you will have heard the story about a group of people standing around and in good Jewish tradition arguing about what really happened at Sinai, as if any of us know what really happened at Mount Sinai. But of course it's seen as such a seminal narrative in our tradition, so important to understand, or at least to grasp, that everything changed in that moment. But the question that these people were arguing about was like, what is the nature of Torah? What is Torah? We talk about Torah min hashamayim, Torah from heaven, Torah mi Moshe, Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. So these particular people were arguing about like, what was it that Moshe really received? And the first person says, it was the whole Torah as we have it today. The Torah that we just returned to the Ark. The Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, Chumshes, the 5 books of Moses from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy. And the second person says, no, it wasn't. It's just the 10 Commandments, like we read, like Yael read, like it was just those. That was what came down from Sinai, because we hear God speaking those words. And the next person says, not the 10 Commandments, just the first 2. First two? The first two? Well, the first two. The first 2 that say, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, and you shall have no other gods before me. And everyone thought, well, I suppose if we're going to have 2, those would be good, because if we have that kind of covenantal relationship with God, then it would inspire us to do all of the other things, I suppose, that the Torah demands of us. And then the next person said, not the first 2, just the first 1. Anochi Hashem, I am God who brought you out of Egypt. That's all you need to know. That's what came down on Sinai. And the next person says, not even the first of the 10, but just the first word of the first of the 10. The word Anochi, the word I. The statement of Anochiut, the I-ness, the idea that there is some kind of presence that we call God in the world, perhaps. And then finally, standing at the back, who'd been listening the whole time, was Rabbi Mendel Turim of Rimanov, a Hasidic rabbi who had been listening to everyone's conversation, and he gently stepped forward and he said, no, my friends, not even the first word of the first of the 10 Commandments, but just the first letter of the first word, the letter Aleph. The letter Aleph, everyone said, the letter Aleph, but the letter Aleph is a silent letter. How can God reveal God's self through words if the letter is silent? And the rabbi responded, the Aleph is almost a silent letter, but not quite. The Aleph is that in-breath that happens before speech can really emerge into the world, and it is the silence with which we need to be receptive to hearing those words. And everybody said, and they got that perhaps that was the profoundest secret of the Torah, because the whole idea of God speaking words in human language, in whatever language that might be, is not really what Torah is meant to be about, certainly according to these mystical understandings. And the Zohar, the main book of Kabbalah, talks about the receiving of Torah in such mystical and almost erotic ways, in which the Torah just slowly and gently and provocatively reveals herself to us. And there's another idea in the Midrash that every moment, every day, every moment, there is that same voice in the atmosphere that was on Choreb, which is another name for Mount Sinai. This constantly echoing voice, the echoing voice of Sinai is there, but we are generally just so noisy in our lives that we can't hear it. And so the idea, or one of the ideas of Shavuot, is that on Shavuot, we actually, through studying Torah, and the tradition is to study Torah all night long, through studying Torah we somehow quieten ourselves down and make ourselves more receptive to hear whatever it is. Because Torah is not just the written Torah, it's the oral Torah. Torah is not even just the written Torah and the oral Torah. It says, when it says, Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai, which is the very first Mishnah from Pirkei Avot, Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, Umasra leHoshua, and he passed it on to Joshua, and Joshua passed it on to the elders, and the elders passed it on to the prophets, and the prophets passed it on to the Anshei Knesset Hagadolah, the men of the Great Assembly, which were the sort of prototypical rabbis. That transmission is kind of like a massive game of telephone, and we don't know what the Torah actually is and how the Torah speaks to us in each moment and each generation, and for each individual is mysterious and endlessly evolving. And so the idea of Shavuot, and this Shavuot has been very amazing in many ways, because people are saying that more people have paid attention in the Jewish world to Shavuot than any other year. Usually Shavuot's like, it's graduation, summer's beginning, I don't really know what Shavuot is, I know what Pesach is, I know what Sukkot is even, I don't really know what Shavuot, I eat cheesecake, right? But somehow, because we are in the situation that we're in, with people separated and people tuning into all kinds of ways in which we're trying to connect community, not just here, but globally, people have somehow listened in a different way to what Shavuot might have for us, how Shavuot might be available for us in a different way. The idea that each of us has a piece of the Torah that is just for us. That's the whole idea. That Kahal Yisrael, the Jewish people, every single individual within it has a piece of Torah that is just for them. And we are so, the world outside is often noisy. It's quieted down a bit, but I can feel it getting a bit more noisy again. Can you? It's like getting a bit more noisy again. But it's not just about outside noise. It's about all of the inside noise, all of the resistance and the questions and the doubts and the, I don't know, I don't believe, all of those relentless voices that most of us have, I certainly do inside my head, that it's impossible to hear with any clarity what that piece of Torah might be that's just for me. But the Sfat Emet, the Hasidic rabbi, the Sfat Emet, really connects the idea. Why is the festival that is really about first fruits also about Torah? Because the idea of the first fruits is that he says that when the Torah came down on Mount Sinai, the Torah is compared to water. And in water you can see reflection. And that through the lens of Torah, everybody saw reflected back to them the truest and deepest essence of who they actually were. And that's how Torah is received, by people seeing themselves in it. Too often in the Jewish community, because of generations of not great education, because of generations of post-Holocaust trauma, you name it, whatever it is, bad education, whatever it is, too many people in the Jewish community don't see themselves in the Torah. And so we remove ourselves from it. And we make ourselves a little more distant. And it's like, I don't know about this Jewish practice. I don't know about the Torah. And we sort of create barriers and resistance to it. And this idea that Sinai is not about like law, traditionally, yes, it's moving. I mentioned it before when we were praying the Psalms of Hallel. Like we move from being the whole idea of Shavuot and receiving the Torah is not about freedom from, but freedom to. It's not about the fact what we left behind. It's about what we're coming to when we leave Egypt. And the 49 days of the Omer, which we completed right before Shavuot. This idea of counting those days is about freedom to receive the Torah, freedom to see ourselves connected to this covenantal relationship that happened on Sinai, however we might understand it. But sometimes that feels like too much of a pressure. Even the Midrash in the Talmud that we studied in our Talmud class 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, the famous Midrash, the mountain was held up like a barrel or something over the heads of Bnei Israel. And God said, take this Torah. If you don't, I'm going to drop it on your heads and it's going to kill you all. It will become your graves. This crazy Midrash that there was some kind of coercion to receiving Torah. But the rabbis aren't unanimous that that's really what happened. There's this actual much deeper idea in the mystical tradition. And we hear it from the Aleph. And we hear it from the fact that, according to the Midrash, Torah preceded creation. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created. But the bait of Bereshit is sometimes seen not as in the beginning, but through the means of Reshit. And Reshit some rabbis say is actually a code word for Torah. Reshit, through the means of Torah, God created the heavens and the earth. God somehow had the Torah as a blueprint for what the universe was going to be, including all of the aberrations of what was possible in the created world, which is why the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that some of us studied with Mori Yehudis a couple of weeks ago, the Mishnah that talks about the 10 things that were created on that first Erev Shabbat, before dark, of creation. And they were all things that were sort of miraculous aspects of the tradition that had to be possible within the blueprint of creation, because it's understood that Torah is so much more than just that scroll that we just put away. It's so much more than this book that we call the Chumash. It's so much more even than the whole of Mishnah and Talmud and Midrash and all of the Jewish sources through all the many, 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 many generations until today. It's more than all of it. And what it is ultimately is this Torah Chesed, this Torah of loving kindness. It is like water, and if we look into the water, we see a reflection of our own neshama, and if we see a reflection of our own neshama, it invites us to receive the piece of Torah that's just for us, so that we can be authentically in the world with our piece of that Torah. Because it says, Kol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. All of the people saw voices. All of the people saw voices. There's something about the experience of Sinai that was, synesthetic. People were seeing what they would normally hear and hearing what they would normally see. And the Midrash on that says, Kol echad ve'echad lefi kocho. Everybody received what they were able to receive according to their capacity. There was a Torah for this group of people over, or this individual over here, and this one here, and the men and the women and the children. Everybody received what they were meant to receive. And so that Aleph, that silent Aleph, is just the possibility, the infinite possibility and potential of Torah to be this evolving and delicious fruit. Final teaching from the Sfat Emet, which is actually a teaching for Simchat Torah, not a teaching for Shavuot. But he compares the two brachot, the blessings that we said that Yael actually chanted before and after she read the Torah today. We say a blessing before and a blessing after. And the Sfat Emet compares these to the blessings that we say before and after food. When we say a blessing before we eat something, we don't know yet how the food is going to impact us. We don't even know if it's going to taste good or bad. We don't know how it's going to be digested in our body. We don't know how it's going to nourish us. We don't know if it's going to be good for us or bad for us. But we say the bracha and we eat. And then the food does what it does. And then after we've finished eating, it says in the Torah, Ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta, you will eat, you will be satisfied. And then, once you've reached that place of sova, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, you say another bracha. And so too says the Sfat Emet, the blessings before and after the Torah. We say before we study Torah, or before we read Torah, we say, Asher b'chavanu v'kol amim v'natan lanu et Torato, notein haTorah. The Torah is notein haTorah, notein. It's being given in every moment. The Torah, Shavuot is about Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of giving of the Torah. So that giving is happening. It's happening. The giving is happening, whether we are receptive or not receptive. It's happening. But the more receptive we are, the more it's going to be absorbed in us. And once we've absorbed it, we say, Asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. It's an amazing phrase, chayei olam, the eternal life, the eternal world, eternal livingness. However you would translate chayei olam, nata b'tochenu. God has planted b'tochenu, in us, the eternal life. And that is the Torah, like as it is nourishing us spiritually inside ourselves. But it's like the language of nitiyah is planting. Just like when we plant a seed, which I did last week, and I'm so not a farmer or gardener, but I thought I'm going to plant some seeds. And I planted seeds, and it's like there's such an amazing thing. You take these little seeds and you put them in the little hole, and you cover them over and you water them, and you have no idea if they're going to germinate, if they're going to grow, if they're going to sprout. You don't really know what, they're old seeds. Are they going to work? Are they not going to work? And this idea of natiyah, planting. The Torah is somehow planted in us on Shavuot. And it's not until we have a chance to absorb and try to refract what the Torah might be for us that we can say Chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. And so the Sfat Emet says that the blessing before the Torah is like Shavuot, and the blessing after the Torah is like Simchat Torah. Because that's when we would celebrate a whole cycle, a whole year of reading the Torah, and we take it and we dance, and the dance is our inner dance, dancing in celebration of the fact that the Torah has been living inside me for that whole year. So I don't know how Torah lives inside us, but I just invite us all to consider what might be, in this moment, especially in this moment, as we are in this. I was talking to Daniel earlier about it. It's easier when we're either in full lockdown or fully back to whatever we want to go back to. But this middle bit of like, what are we doing? How are we doing this? And that has Torah in it too. I spoke about last week about the liminal space of Bamidbar, this place of transition. But like, what is the Torah for this moment? What is the Torah that we need? Each of us as individuals, what is the Torah that we need in order to go out into the world post, whenever that might be, post COVID-19. There's Torah in everything, and there's Torah in us. And some of us have resistance and think, Torah's not for me. But I just invite us all just to consider the question on this Shavuot, like the first fruits. Like, what would it be? What am I eating? What am I ingesting? What is nourishing my body from the Torah that is just for me, in this moment right now? And it may be that this is the year where we take on new mitzvot, or where we take on a regular course of saying, every week I'm going to study something. I'm going to choose something and study it. And we've had some amazing studying going on online throughout all of this with Pirkei Avot and Talmud and the Tuesday discussion group. We're starting actually next week, every Tuesday night at 6, we're going to do a Pasha Shavuot class on Zoom. And so if you want to join and start after Shavuot with a commitment to studying and discussing the Pasha every week. People, all the dozen or so people who were coming every night to the Pirkei Avot classes just want to carry it on. So once a week we're going to be studying some Mishnah from Pirkei Avot. And they're just opportunities. It's not like that's the only way you can have a relationship with Torah, but it helps us. If we study these amazing texts, it helps us discover what might be the Torah for us. So it's juicy first fruit, friends. So let's eat the first fruits together and bless the Torah that lives inside us, and allow it, like water, to reflect the deepest essence of who we are on this Shavuot. Chag Sameach.